Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Katelyn, and today we are continuing my portfolio overhaul series. So last time I did the biome of all these different creatures and such to add to my portfolio redesign, and today we're going to be doing a character redesign. So for those of you who didn't know, I am redoing my portfolio to try to help me get some freelance gigs and to try to break into the industry a bit, whether that's doing illustrations or concept art for video games or doing stuff within the comic industry. That's like what I really want to do. So I have a mentor that kind of recommended some pieces for me to do my overhaul with, and we are finally on the last piece for my portfolio. So the final thing that my mentor recommended I do is basically take the process that video game concept artists do in rendering and creating concept pieces for different video game assets. So I'm going to put a little video here from an artist I follow named RJ Palmer. He does amazing work in terms of concept art and the like, so please go check him out. I'll have a link to this post down in the description. But you can see here he's making like a meat zombie dragon out of images of like raw meats and steaks and things. And so the idea is you take those different images off of like Google and then skin them to your character and paint over them. This basically helps a concept artist really quickly and efficiently get into the meat of the drawing. They get to lay down the textures quickly and efficiently, paint over them, and then be able to present a concept for the different assets of the game very quickly. And so I'm gonna try to do this process. I did it once when I took a class back in college. I did like an online class through Nomon, which is another art school here in California. But I don't know if it was like the online class situation or like me not being as comfortable with my art or even this process, but I honestly have been dreading this piece a bit. It's kind of intimidating thinking about using the textures from Google and then painting over them. I haven't done it since that class, and I didn't really enjoy it during the class, so we're gonna see how this goes. I don't really know how it's gonna pan out, but I'm pretty hopeful. So to help me get through this piece that I'm kind of dreading, I picked a subject that I knew I'd have fun with. I need to make sure that I pick something that I'll enjoy if I'm doing something that makes me uncomfortable or that I don't think I'm gonna enjoy as much. So for that, I picked an old D&D character of mine that I have not played in a couple of years, but is still very near and dear to my heart. This is my dragonborn rogue that I created forever ago. I think this piece was from like 2016, 17. It feels like a little after college that I drew this, but it's an older piece. And don't even ask me how to say that name because I don't think I even used the name in the top right for my character. I think that was like the plan and then I never used it. But what I want to do is I want to take this character and redesign it as rendered as possible. And I think this will be a great one to test out because we got the scales from the dragonborn. We're going to have different leather textures from the armor and different areas. And then we're going to also have the metals and such that are present on their armor. I really love her design, and I think this was one of my favorite like color palettes that I've done for a character, so I'm already excited to redraw and re-render this character. So let's jump in. I'm thinking I'm gonna do kind of like a cool sassy pose because I basically played her as kind of like a hothead. So I kind of picture her as that character, and then I'm going to render her out, get all those textures laid in, and start painting. So let's get this started and wish me luck with rendering this in this weird way that I'm not used to. All right, let's jump in and start this really big rendered piece. So I had a couple of things in mind when I was jumping into this. So first off, I knew I wanted to kind of do a cool character splash art, basically like showing the whole character, the full body, doing like a really cool or sassy pose to show off her personality. And I was like, okay, well, so since she's a rogue, I was like, what if she's like stealing like some money or something, or like twirling some keys or doing something cool like that, and getting some motion in that pose. And I'm like, oh, this works really well. I love the idea of her having like a big bag of cash or some type of stolen goods slung over her shoulder and then like kind of twirling the keys. Maybe she took off a guard or something cool like that. And that was kind of the pose I was going for. And I've been trying to be better about like the flipping the canvas thing, especially when I'm doing a character pose like this. It's been really helping me improve their poses and I guess weight overall. So I really liked how this one was turning out. But then also what I did with this one was I updated kind of her body proportions. I didn't mind her old ones as much, but I felt she looked a little thin for a dragonborn for me nowadays. I think I just made her a little bit more streamlined and thinner when I was younger and created this character, but now I'm kind of like, I like the idea of her being still kind of brawny because her backstory kind of lines up with that. I'm trying to remember the backstory. It's been like many years, so I'm probably going to get some names and things wrong, but basically her backstory was she came from a family of knights, like basically protectors, and that was kind of her upbringing. She was trained as a knight, knows really good combat, ended up getting strong and kind of brawny and beefy, especially from her family heritage of all dragonborns. And she decided to go into being a rogue after her family was, like, her whole family knighthood was dismantled by another, I guess you could call them knight clans, I'm just going to call them that, by another clan that basically framed her family and set them up for death, basically. So she escaped and she decided she was going to kind of hide undercover, change her persona, still has the training from being a knight, so she is strong, but she decided to go for more of a thievery, rogue approach, so then she could probably infiltrate the opposing faction that framed and killed her family, and basically be able to steal from others to survive. Since her family was completely dismantled and such, she doesn't really have the cash and income of her family anymore and needs to find ways to survive. And she's also using her rogue capabilities to basically steal from that richer knight family to help the people that they oppress. I can't remember what the other faction was. I think this one had something to do with like violets or something, like the faction that she was from. I'm gonna have to go back and try to find her lore document because, like I said, it's been since like 2016 since I've looked at this character and I've forgotten like everything somehow. But all of the knight factions I think were named off of like different flowers, and I think there was like 3 or 4 in total, like hers, the opposing one that framed her family, and then like one more I felt that God, it is like escaping my brain. I would love to play this character again sometime. I did do a small campaign with her, with a couple of friends, like I kind of reintroduced her into a game, and it was fun playing as her. It's kind of interesting doing a Dragonborn rogue because honestly, Dragonborns aren't like super built for stealth, but somehow I still was able to kind of optimize her to be that way. Because like I said, Dragonborns are very, very beefy, kind of stronger characters. And I don't really see many Dragonborn rogues as much. I see like fighters and barbarians and different characters like that. But yeah, I was pretty psyched to redraw this character. So as you can see here, I re-reviewed the RJ Palmer video right before getting into doing these textures. And I wanted to show you guys my full process and show you what textures I pulled from Google. So this was the part that probably took the longest because I wanted to set myself up for kind of an easier execution. So what I did was I manipulated and warped the different scales and textures on the body, and then I clipping masked them so they were ready and in the right position so then I could just jump in right away and paint, because I just wanted to make sure this was going to be an easy and seamless thing for me to do, because I just wanted to jump in and get it going since I was already kind of dreading it. And so I was just going through finding all my different textures, and I think I'm really happy like with the scales the most of all the textures I was able to find and place on this, because I was able to get like these bigger, thicker scales for the body, which looking back, they'd probably be like a little bit smaller, but I really like having those bigger, beefier scales along her body. And then in her face, I used the bush viper for the face overall because I just really liked the kind of pointy scales that come with a bush viper's head. And then I was like, well, why don't I just get a head-on shot of a bush viper and literally use those scales as a base? And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This works great. And then one thing to keep in mind is when you're inputting these textures, you don't need to worry so much about the color of them. It probably does help if you are wanting to have the color match what your final product is going to be, like, I guess to save time. But you'll see here that I'm manipulating the color in a little bit to change it up and make it match the character's colors. So you don't need to be like, okay, well, I only can use purple scales or only red scales. You can get other color scales, change them to black and white, make them like a different blending layer. I think I used, did I use overlay? I don't even remember what I used, but you can make it a different blending layer and instantly make it the color you need. So just a fun fact that I learned that I thought might help you guys. But yeah, so like my metals and other things, they weren't that bluish metal, and same with all my leathers. So you can find ways to make them the colors that you want to make them. Plus, you're going to be painting over them anyway. So it's okay if it's not an exact matching color. And so now with my textures laid in, it was time to start painting and rendering and like slowly building up these different textures. And this part was like at first very daunting, but once I really get this face going, I really hit a stride and I'm like, there it is. I know what I'm doing. I'm figuring this out. And it was really cool because like I didn't really know much coming in. Like I said, I watched RJ Palmer's video. I kind of remembered a little bit from my class, and then I watched a few other videos on how people like apply painting over these textures. And so I was kind of flying in a little blind. But once you get going, it kind of was like intuitive. Like I figured it out. I would just do like eyedropper tool from the different textures and layers that were already there. And that really helped me like build the painting layer. I could easily just pick colors from the existing layers and start building and building on top of them. And it just worked awesomely. And I really liked it. Basically what I did was I had a color, like a main base color layer. I added all the textures above it, and then above that, I recolored all of my textures, and then above that, I just had a free-form painting layer. Depending on who you are and how you feel about that, you can add like multiple layers to your work process, but for me, I was like, I want to treat it almost like a traditional painting. I have my one layer that I'm going to keep layering and painting on top of, because I wanted to be able to manipulate it a little bit, I guess, easier. And I felt that if I put too many layers, it would get lost and potentially messy. So I was like, I'm going to leave it at this one layer. And this one layer is where I'm going to paint and add all of my extra texturing. And so it's not like I'm building too many textures on top of textures, I guess is the best way to describe it. I just didn't want it to get too messy, because I could foresee myself overworking it. I could easily just slip into putting too much detail in an area or not enough in one other area. And this seemed to work out pretty well. I think having that one layer of coloring and like the coloring over the texture really helped this and made it streamlined for me and somehow less intimidating, because I don't know. I find comfort in using a lot of layers just because I could go back and be like, oh, I just want to change this one real quick or manipulate this little bit. But having it all on one layer somehow just made it click for me a lot better. So if you ever want to try this, I'd love to hear if you guys do. Let me know if you do the multi-layer approach, the one-layer approach. I'm very curious to see what you think, because there's, like I said, I watched some other videos, studied some other concept artists before getting into this, and it kind of varied. There's some people that use a ton of layers, and there's some that maybe use like 2. So I don't think there's really a right or wrong way. You just got to feel out what feels best for you. But I guess just a total side note that I thought of, I bet having the multiple layers does help in a professional setting a little bit more, just so you can manipulate the color a little bit better. So for example, like if this was going to a client and they're like, we don't like her purple scales, we want it to be green, right? I don't have it separated to the point where I can do that edit, because I have the color base that's over all my textures, but then the painting on top of it has all the purples. Like there's no way I could change that to green. So side note, I didn't even think about that, but if it was in a professional concept artist situation, I'd be shit out of luck if they were like, hey, we want to change this character to green or to blue, or like, can we make her cape like this other color? That would make it a little bit difficult to change it. So yeah, just think about what your final result is gonna be. I guess for mine, since I already knew this character and the color palette, and then I just had a couple changes that I had some art friends suggest, which weren't too bad, but I didn't have to go to a client for this. So just keep in mind, I guess, what you're using it for, like if it's gonna be client work, if it's gonna be just personal work that you're like, yeah, this is what the character looks like, this is all I need. But just keep that in mind, I guess. Long story short. Me talking like I'm a professional in the concept artist world. Not yet. I'm hoping to break into it soon. I would love to do concept work full time for either like video games or animation or something, or if my comic Foxmong Hounds gets picked up, that would be amazing too. But, you know, here's to growing, because man, doing this portfolio really helped me grow and change as an artist, and I learned a lot. All right, guys, we are all done with this super render, and I am so happy about it. I am over the moon with how this turned out. As you can see, it's quite the glow up for my character, honestly. Like, she looks so badass. I made her a little bit thicker, like closer to more of a dragonborn physique, and I love her. I love her so much. I had a blast doing the rendering. At first, I wasn't digging it because I think I was just like really concerned about it, not feeling it and freaking out. But now that it's done, I'm over the moon. I absolutely love it. And it was a really fun experience and took a really long time. Many hours. But it was very worth it. I think this was a great learning experience. And now I know generally how to do it. I mean, I don't think I'm a pro at it, but I feel a lot more confident in it and feel like I could do this again if I ever needed to. So yeah, I think I'm gonna call this one done. I am really happy with how this project came out. I am glad that my portfolio's done with this final piece. And if you guys enjoy me doing these kind of experimental videos where I'm trying different painting techniques or different industry techniques, let me know in the comments below, like if you want to see any others or see videos kind of similar to this. And if you guys aren't already, please hit the subscribe button, join our community, leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and if you have a couple extra bucks laying around and you want to support me, check out my Patreon. It really helps me keep this channel going by being able to hire an editor and upgrade my equipment. So if you want to support me directly and get some art goodies for yourself, check out my Patreon. But either way, thank you guys again so much for stopping by, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.